The year was 1950. Diners Club, the first modern credit card, was just introduced, colour TV was just becoming a thing, and in May 17th, 1950, Howard Elliot Ashman was born in. He was born into a loving family and soon had a younger sister who adored him. As a child, Howard and his sister, Sarah Ashman Gillespie, had a good childhood with accepting parents who were totally fine with an often what would be considered very effeminate son. The siblings argued, as basically all siblings do, but also had many good times together. Also, Howard adored theatre and used to direct backyard musicals as well as his sister's birthday parties, with his first known piece being a piece called Abner Polk's Chops, which he wrote, directed and starred in at the age of 10. And it wasn't long before Howard was wanting to get out there and pursue his passion for theatre, which he found when he joined the Children's Theatre Association at the age of 6, a place that quickly became his home away from home. He loved dancing, performing and writing poems, and the Baltimore Theatres Association was a place that gave him the space to really express himself with like-minded individuals. Later on, after he was done with school, a year early since he had skipped a grade, he moved on to Goddard College in Vermont, and then Indiana University before moving on to New York City in 1974 to work in Grosset and Dunlop Publishers. He was so happy to be out of the education system and working in the real world of work. He loved his job in publishing and thought that he would be there for the long run, but that didn't end up happening. Soon, 2 of his one-act plays, named Cosmo is Afraid of the Dark and Mud Season, ended up being produced in a New York theatre festival. It was all at a very small scale to start off with, but Howard was so excited about it. So much in fact that he eventually left publishing to focus on theatre, and went on to take over leadership of a Broadway theatre called the Workshop of Players Art Foundation, or WPA for short. While at the WPA, he conceived, wrote and directed a musical adaptation of Kurt Vonnegut's God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater, a show that opened on his 29th birthday. It's here that he began his friendship with Alan Menken, who wrote the music for God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater. From there, the now duo moved on to based on Roger Corman's 1960s era comedy horror film. This show blew up and was played all around the world. It even got another film adaptation, and yes, that is a film based on a theatre production that is also based on a film. I know. But it did turn out to be a good idea, as it is loved by many around the world. Then afterwards, in 1986, Howard wrote and directed a Broadway musical called Smile, this time with music by Marvin Hamlich. This unfortunately flopped, despite it being considered a lost gem now. But what they didn't know at the time though was that their biggest opportunity was just around the corner, when they got a call from Disney. David Geffen was a producer who had seen Howard Ashman and Alan Menken's work on Little Shop of Horrors. He was so impressed with them that he told his friend Jeffrey Katzenberg, yes, that Jeffrey Katzenberg, about the duo, with Jeffrey Katzenberg being Disney's chairman at the time. David thought that the duo would be able to help the then struggling Disney to get back to their former glory that they had lost following the death of Walt Disney. So Howard wasn't the typical sort of person you'd see at Disney, being a gay guy from the theatre, which probably doesn't sound that strange now, but at the time, Disney wasn't as synonymous with musical theatre as it is now, and is still struggling to associate themselves with anything gay up until this day. One line of dialogue, it was just one line of dialogue. Do people really not have better things to do with their lives? Anyway though, Jeffrey still made the call, and Howard was very quick to accept, and made his start at Disney by writing the opening song to Oliver and Company, named Once Upon a Time in New York City. And this actually came just at the right time for Howard Ashman. He was distraught after Smile flopped, and at the same time was heavily hurt by the AIDS crisis, which had taken the lives of many people that he knew. Luckily, he still did have surviving friends though, as well as his family to support him, with Alan Menken being an especially close friend. With Alan, he got the chance to let his emotions out in a beautiful, moving song called Sheridan Square. In this song, Howard sang about the loss of his community in Sheridan Square, a place that is home to Stonewall and a lot of the LGBT plus community in New York. HIV was very stigmatized at the time, with it being referred to as gay cancer by many. The government also wasn't much help and just ignored it for as long as they possibly could. Around 37.9 million people are living with HIV/AIDS worldwide as of 2018, and 770,000 people died from HIV-related illnesses worldwide in 2018, and that's not even accounting for the ones before that point. Although thankfully that number is decreasing, and the number of deaths in 2018 was 56% less than its peak in 2004. It obviously wasn't just gay men that got it though. Many women also got it, and it is a hereditary disease, so some of those women then passed it on to their kids. This was especially troublesome in poorer country where there was even less support, less birth control, and less opportunity to pay for any available treatments as they came out. Even with the fact that it didn't affect just gay men, it still became known as a gay man's disease, mostly because the first major causes of it in New York were in gay men, and the press just kind of ran with it. And the whole thing really just became a double whammy for gay men. The government already didn't really want to support gay men as it was, let alone gay men with a disease. So, as a result, many protests erupted, demanding medical help and care as the gay community fought for survival. But it was a little too late for much of Howard's community. Although Alan Menken isn't gay himself, he was a great ally and friend for Howard and helped him through those hard times and beyond. And as the Baltimore Children's Theatre Association was Howard's escape and home away from home as a kid, working on Disney animated films quickly became Howard's escape as an adult. After Oliver and Company, Alan Menken and Howard Ashman were kept on board at Disney to work on future projects and had fully settled into their new homes in Los Angeles. One of the first actions that Howard felt like he needed to do was to get the company back on track if they wanted to stay relevant. So yes, he was just brought in to be a lyricist alongside Alan Menken, who was doing the music, but according to Roy Disney, he had a remarkably similar influence on people to the influence that Walt Disney had in the past on the team. In fact, one day Howard brought all of the staff into a small nearby theatre, sat them in front of him, and told them all the history of American musicals and of Disney animated films while pointing out the parallels between them both. He also told about the impact that songs would have for the emotional peaks in the stories. He showed just how much of a missed opportunity it was for them to be not embracing musical theatre in their films, since the two mediums paired together so well. So chances are, without Howard really hammering that message across, Disney may not be as synonymous with musical theatre as it is now. He also put his all into their upcoming project, The Little Mermaid, where he was a producer as well as the lyricist. And luckily for him, he was working with Ron Clements and John Musker, who were very open to collaboration. Really, everything in Disney was going perfect, and Howard was getting the chance to express himself through a company that he loved, giving him a break from the still ongoing AIDS crisis that was claiming so many lives. In The Little Mermaid, he came up with the idea to have Sebastian be a Jamaican crab, and he also came up with that whole performance that they did in Under the Sea. He also made Part of Your World, which I recently realised is considered to be quite an important song for queer people, since many feel like it represents their longing to be a part of the normal world where they are no longer stigmatized. It's not just speculation though, there's a whole load of reasons why it was probably the case. For starters, Alan Menken has actually said that Howard did write songs as a reflection of himself. And there's also the fact that when good old Jeffrey wanted to cut the song from the film after the test audiences reacted badly, Howard said something along the lines of, "Over my dead body, I'll strangle you." Fair to say he was very emotionally attached to it. And by the way, Jeffrey now admits that it was a good idea to keep it in. And there's a whole lot more too, but I don't want to go off topic too much. So if you are interested in queerness in Disney in general, there's a great channel that I found that I'll link down below that has a few videos to do with that. Anyway though, midway through work on The Little Mermaid, the illness that Howard had been trying to get away from for so long had unfortunately caught up with him. In spring of 1988, Howard and his partner, Bill Loach, started to see that Howard was becoming unusually ill. Howard's doctor wanted to test him for HIV, but Howard didn't want to take it. He felt like if he did come back positive, it would be an incriminating thing for him, and he might lose health coverage and future job opportunities, and generally people just wouldn't look at him in the same way. But it was obvious to them, though, that Howard had AIDS and had basically been given a death sentence. Howard was adamant that nobody should know about his condition, even the team that he was currently working with, including his close friend Alan Menken. The only person he did tell was Jeffrey Katzenberg, who thankfully took it quite well. Now, more than ever though, Howard knew that he must continue pushing on with his passion to continue working on his animated films. He didn't let AIDS stop him, keeping his team motivated and focused towards finishing The Little Mermaid. At the 1990 Oscars, Howard Ashman won an Oscar for Best Original Song, and Alan Menken won Best Original Score, and The Little Mermaid itself was a box office and critical hit. Howard, along with Alan Menken and the rest of his team, had done it. Disney had now risen from the depths that it was at and was back on track. But after winning their awards, Howard told Alan that he had something to tell him once they arrived back home from the award ceremony. At this point, Howard was extremely sick, so much so that when he was in the hotel room, he had to be hooked up with an IV giving him medication. So, at the state that it was at, Howard thought that it was about time that he told Alan what was going on. Both of them met in Howard's house and Howard passed on the news. He was sick, he had AIDS, and wasn't going to be alive for much longer. He also said that he was so happy that Alan had gotten an Oscar because it meant that he would be set up for life, and would be fine after his passing. It was a very emotional night for Alan since, as with many of the other team, they didn't notice the sickness in Howard. Alan had absolutely no idea that he was sick before their talk, especially since Howard was doing his best to hide it from them and they hadn't really noticed his gradual degradation. Again though, Howard was determined to keep going. At Jeffrey's annual beach house party, Howard showed interest in working on Aladdin, but Jeffrey convinced him to work on Beauty and the Beast first, which he reluctantly did. Before long though, it was clear that Howard couldn't come into work. So everyone relocated to Residence Inn in New York, where Howard and his partner had to move, and they all got to work on Beauty and the Beast, despite some of them not knowing why they had to pack up their storyboards and move over. But despite having to work from home, Howard continued being his usual self. When working on Beauty and the Beast, they could not come up with an opening to the story. Howard suggested starting it off with a prince who would become the Beast, starting off the story as a naughty little boy causing mischief. It seemed like a great, tragic opening to the story for him, but the rest of the team found it cheap and hilarious in totally the wrong way.
And he just ripped into us like I've never been ripped into before.
And thankfully, the opening that they came up with in the end ended up actually being pretty great. And soon, the team had enough together with the film to throw a press party. Here, they showed off some of the clips, and Alan played some of the songs for them on the piano. The press loved what they were seeing and hearing, and the event was a huge success. But Howard wasn't there to enjoy that success. After the event, the team rushed over to St. Vincent's Hospital, where Howard was at the time. When they got there, they saw that he was dying. He was 80 pounds, had lost his sight, and could barely speak. They all told him what a huge success the party had been, and how the press had loved it. As they said their goodbyes, one of the team members whispered in his ear that Beauty and the Beast was going to be a huge success. Who would have guessed? Howard lit up for a second and said, "I would have." After winning the award for Best Original Song for Beauty and the Beast, Howard's partner was the one to come up to collect the award. Howard wasn't there to see the award being won. He passed away at the age of 41 on March 14th, 1991, without ever having seen the completed film, or having had the chance to move into the new house that his partner designed and built for them. A dedication was played for Howard Ashman at the end of Beauty and the Beast, Some of his songs also made it into Aladdin when the team finally moved on to making it. But that was it. That's where his time at Disney ended. The pandemic that had killed millions of lives around the world and had wiped out the population usually seen at Sheridan Square had claimed its latest victim. Medicines to help people with AIDS prolong their life eventually started coming out, and they got cheap enough so that they could be provided to poorer communities. But unfortunately, it was a little too late for Howard, who I have no doubt would have continued to soar alongside his team and Alan Menken. If you want to read more about Howard Ashman, his sister has made a blog about him, which is full of stories and is actually a really nice read. It was a major help when making the earliest part of this video, but there's a whole load more on there. Link is in the description. I've also linked some resources down there about HIV and AIDS too. Stay safe everyone, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.